Hey, welcome back to Aircraft Adventures. I'm Liam Locke, and we are in the Microsoft Flight Simulator X Flight Simulator. Part 2 of our journey from Ronald Reagan National Airport to Chicago O'Hare in the Boeing 737-800 aircraft. And we are coming back a little bit early because I've attempted this descent and approach into Chicago a number of times, and I now understand why they call Chicago the Windy City, because on every single attempt, literally I have landed at a different runway. It's been incredible. So I don't expect this flight to be any different. Hopefully it's going to be one of the 5 or so runways that I've already attempted to land on. But right now, we are at our cruising altitude of 34,000 feet, 270 knots, getting ready, about 11 nautical miles from the empty waypoint. That's kind of an interesting name for a waypoint. And you'll recall that in our flight plan, we set up for an approach via the Watson 3 star into Chicago. And the transition to that star is the Rod waypoint, or actually the Rosewood is the actual name of the Rod VOR, coming up in just over 40 nautical miles away. But we've got a bunch of things we need to kind of check on to figure out if we're actually going to fly that star and what runway we might end up landing on. So just to give you a visual, let's take a quick look at the Navigraph map. If we go out here to the Navigraph display, you can see we are just now flying over Columbus, Ohio. And the Rod waypoint is up here with this little marker. And this is where we would start our star into Chicago. First thing we need to do is we want to check the weather. So we're going to go back into the aircraft here for a second. And let's go down to our radio. We've got our destination weather programmed in. We are flying with real-world weather using Active Sky. So we need to tune to 122.02 and listen to the weather.
Kilo Oscar Romeo Delta Airport Information Papa 1322 Zulu weather wind 234 at 6 visibility 3 sky condition ceiling 600 overcast light rain temperature 17 dew point 16 altimeter 2984 advice on initial contact to information Papa.
So Chicago definitely doesn't disappoint once again. We've got overcast conditions, very low clouds with a 600 feet. 2984 is the current altimeter setting. So we'll jump up and just dial that in here in advance. You can see it down here on the primary flight display. So 2984 pre-programmed for our descent. Transition altitude will be 18,000. We'll confirm that when we actually look at the approach chart. But winds, this is our key number, right? So winds out of 234 at 6 knots. We need to go back and look at the runway information for Chicago. Now, I am playing obviously an FSX, and I have updated the airport information to make it more with the current time. So it's an AFCAD file if you're not familiar with it. I've uploaded the AFCAD file for Chicago, and we've got a bunch of additional runways. If we go out and look at Navigraph again, let's just bring up the runway information for Chicago. We need to bring up the chart list here. Look at the airport. So this is our airport. We've got winds coming out of 234, so it's just going to be down here in this direction. So it looks like probably a good landing for 22 left. That way we're coming in against the wind with a slight crosswind. So we're going to set up for 22 left. 8,075 feet is our runway. So 22 left. We can see transition altitude 18,000, airport elevation 680, touchdown elevation is 654. Our ILS is going to be frequency 110.10. The runway is ILQQ. That's the indicator we'll look for, name of the ILS signal. Our approach course is 225. And our glide slope intercept will be 2,500 feet. we're just following across right up here. We're going to have a decision altitude of 854. So category D, ILS 8, decision altitude of 854. And I think that's it. We'll just make note of the Keneal waypoint, 11.3 nautical miles from the airport. And we're going to have a different approach. So if we look at, well, what I did originally, I can go up here and just show you. So if we look at arrivals, here's Chicago Airport here in the middle. And we're down here getting ready. We're actually flying across the Rod waypoint right now. We actually want to go not quite Watson 3, which comes down and up around here to the airport. We want to get on this VEC, not VEC, it's actually the Ernie 5. And that's what we've got set up here. So if we get rid of this overview, now we'll look at the overlay for Ernie 5. We can see we're coming in here to Rod. We're going to continue up over Fort Wayne and then head to this stash waypoint. So we need to update our flight management computer in order to do all of these things. So let me just clean this up here. And we need to get back into the aircraft because we are still moving about. So we've got a lot of things to get set up. We're just approaching the Rod waypoint. See, we're just approaching the Rod waypoint here on the navigation display. So let's go down and change our arrival. So to the FMC Chicago arrival, we want to do 22 left now. ILS 22 left. Nope, picked the wrong one. Go back, departure arrival. Left. Yes, 22 left. We're going to use the Ernie 5 with a transition at Stash. Should be good. We're going to execute this. Now this is going to get added on to the end of our flight plan, which makes a giant mess. So from FWA, which is Fort Wayne, right, we want to make sure that we're heading to Stash as our next. So if we just scroll down the list here, because the flight plan's all jacked up because of the additional information that was already programmed in for runway 4 right. I'm just going to scroll down the list here and find Stash. So here's Stash. We're going to grab it, drop it down in the scratch pad. We're going to go back up to FWA. And just after FWA, we're going to insert Stash. So that's going to drop everything out in between. And now I should have an appropriate flight plan, which we can look at here real quick. We go to our plan. Zoom out here a little bit. Step forward, now we can see right Stash. Now we've got the star for our arrival and then a line up with the runway 22 left at the Ernie waypoint. Okay, well, I wanted to come back real quick before we leave this screen because I actually overlooked one thing. Well, this adjustment to this flight plan looks like it's correct. The downside of looking at it at this range is you can't see potential vector problems. So I wanted to come back and zoom in and just show you what I mean. We'll zoom in here a little bit and step through this a little further. This will become a problem beyond mince. If you see from Ernie, we wanted to turn towards the runway. However, that star actually takes you further out west, and I don't want that to happen. So I need to get rid of the rest of the star after Ernie and just connect it up with Kennel for our descent down to the runway. So there's one more change we need to make here, and you would actually see that vector. If we step forward just a little bit more, you would see it goes out here to the west, and then we get to BAM, and it just vectors out on a straight track. So we need to get rid of that. So from Kennel, we want to click Kennel and go ahead and put it down here in the scratch pad, and scroll back up, and just after Ernie, we want to drop in Kennel there. now we'll execute our flight plan, and now it's correct. If we step back through, we'll see from Ernie, we go straight to Kennel, and we'll drop to our final descent down to runway 22 left at Chicago. So that is correct. That looks much better, and that won't present a problem for us later on in this flight because I overlooked that step. So I just wanted to point that out. So we've still got a number of things we need to get done. Go back to our map here. We need to go back and look at the star. So here's our star information coming into stash. We don't have any predicted altitudes. However, we do have this under 10,000 feet at mints. So we're going to go for that. We're going to set that up as our target below 10,000 feet, and that's going to give us a new top of descent. So go back into the aircraft here. We need to find mints. Here's mints, and it's already got it programmed in for us because it's a part of the star, which is great. So that should give us a new top of descent. We'll go back and look at our progress. We can see over here on the right CDU, our top of descent is coming up in 62 nautical miles. So a little ways out, so we're good set there. Before we start our descent, a few more things we want to check. So our initial descent is going to be down to 10,000. So that's coming up, as we said, in just over 60 nautical miles. We can go back into the MCP, and we'll go ahead and give the Flight Management Guidance System approval to start its descent at our top of descent down to 10,000. So we're not starting our descent yet, we're just setting the altitude on the MCP. So 10,000. Do a quick heading to course check, 315. Everything else looks good here. We want to set up our approach settings and course heading. We said it's 225. Now here's the tricky thing, right? I'm looking at Navigraph, which has got actual charts for the airport. So I can't rely on that information 100%. I've got to look at FSX's map. So if we go into the FSX map, I need to confirm that the airport has the same ILS information for the runway. So here we're just moving our way over to Chicago. Should be right there. We'll click on the airport. We want to verify that, first off, that we have a 22 left, which we do because I have updated that information. Runway length matches, ILQQ, so our ILS ID matches as well. That is good. Course heading 224, not 225, and the ILS frequency does match. So we're going to use the 224 rather than the 225. Since that's what's in FSX. So now we've verified that information. Everything else is accurate. Go ahead and just put that in now. So we'll go up here. 224. Go down to our nav radios, go ahead and set them up for the ILS frequency, so 110, 10, and we set it up on both sides. We'll activate both of those. We've got our runway length at 8,075 feet. I have not had any success getting the heads-up display to work yet, but I'll go through the exercise. So we need to put in our runway elevation, and currently the runway elevation we noted to be 654. And this is another one of those things that you probably need to verify in FSX because all the runways are flat. So I am going to do that real quick. Let me just see what the airport elevation is according to FSX. Airport elevation is 668. 668. So all the runways will be at 668. Runway elevation 668. And now we need the length of the runway as well. The length is 8,075. Now that is set up. We also need to go up to the flight management computer and put in our landing approach reference. We're going to use a 30-degree flap landing today, so we just select that once and then select it again. That drops it down here into our flaps, so we're set for flaps 30 with a VREF of 150, 110, 225. I tried to change this before, so you really can't change this. This is coming from the AIRAC data. So it knows it's 225. FSX has it as 224. Nothing you can do about that I'm aware of. We did get our decision altitude. We said decision altitude was 854, so that's our baro here. We want to pre-program in our decision altitude. Notice down here on the primary flight display, 854. So that's taken care of, prepared in advance. We can see our top of descent is coming up here on the navigation display, just over 20 nautical miles away. Check and see what else we have to get set up. Nothing additional to do at this moment. We will listen to the weather again once we start our descent. Continue to track our progress. Take a quick look outside. Lots of cloud, overcast conditions at Chicago with a very low cloud deck, if I heard that correctly. So we may not see the runway until the very last minute. Won't make for a very interesting descent into Chicago because we probably won't be able to see too much. But we'll see if that changes as we get a little closer. I do have the top-down view, so this is Fort Wayne. Everything looks good. We've been flying for just over an hour now, an hour and 4 minutes since we departed Ronald Reagan National Airport. Everything appears to be set up here. I'll just do a quick scan of the instrumentation. Our MCV altitude is set. We've got our course. All of our engine information is in the white, so no issues there. I am flying with failures, so you know I've had enough excitement flying into Chicago to 5 different runways. I certainly don't need to be dealing with a failure, but that's certainly always a possibility. 200. If you look over here to the first officer's CDU. Currently 199 nautical miles away from the airport. Top of descent is at 6 nautical miles. Fuel is looking pretty good. Just spot check our radios. We've got our radio ready for getting the weather. So everything looks fine right now. Top of descent is just about to hit. Should automatically kick in, and there it goes. So you can see from the primary flight display that we are starting to follow our descent path down to our target of below 10,000 feet at the Mince waypoint. While we're looking here, we can also see that we've got our ILS information programmed in for the runway, 110.10 frequency, course of 224. We won't get any DME, which is basically distance from the runway, until we get a little bit closer. Go back outside and see that the plane is starting its descent. Go back and look over here at the Navigraph display. Zoom in here a little bit. So here we are, heading towards South Bend before we end up going over the water and lining up for approach into Chicago O'Hare. We'll do a heading to course adjustment. feet and descending 1,850 feet per minute. Transition altitude, we can go back and just take a quick look at the runway information once again. So we do have transition altitude of 18,000. We can look at our missed approach information. We should get that as well while we're over here. So missed approach is going to be, we climb to 4,000 feet with a turn at 1,100, climbing left at 1,100, heading to the CGT VOR. 160, so about 849, 900 feet per minute as we descend along the glide slope. Glide slope is 3 degrees standard. That should be fine. So Stash is the waypoint that starts the Ernie 5 star to Chicago. We're just over about 27, just over 27 nautical miles from Stash. If you look up here in the upper right of the navigation display. There's some things also we can do to get set up for landing, so we can go ahead and arm our auto brake now, which we'll do. So I'll set it for 3, not a max, but set it for 3. That way I don't forget about that as we get closer to the airport. And here's something that in this particular aircraft I always forget to do, and that is the landing gear has got 3 positions. So it's been up since we took off from Ronald Reagan, and it needs to go into this off position. So we'll put it in the off position. It's a different arrangement than any of the other aircraft that I've flown. Look at the overhead, so we don't have any errors, but we do need to set up our landing altitude. 668 is what FSX had for it. We'll put it to 650 since it goes in increments of 50. Everything else is looking good. I'm going to bring up our back to Navigraph here and look at our star. You can see that we are approaching the stash waypoint. We'll start to make our way along over the water, reaching just below 10,000 feet at Mince. And then Ernie is actually our initial approach fix, I believe it is, for our descent towards the runway. And Ernie should also have a different altitude, which we'll spot check here in a moment. Let's go back to the aircraft. You can actually look at the navigation display, look at the flight management computer, I should say. Back to our legs. So Mince 10,000. Looks like the next altitude at Kennel is 4,000. Yep, Kennel is 4,000. Just look at the approach chart. So we need to be 4,000 or above at Kennel and then descend to 2,500 to intercept our glide slope for the runway. That's going to be the plan. Looking good. Just about crossing Stash. 1 nautical mile away. Out here and look at my checklists. I have not armed the speed brakes yet because we may need some drag as we descend towards the runway. I will arm those later. Auto brake is set. Transition altitude we are about to approach. We probably should listen to the weather one more time. Let's do that and get the updated weather information.
Kilo, Oscar, Romeo, Delta, airport information, Sierra 1322, Zulu, weather, wind 234 at 6, visibility 3, sky condition, ceiling 600, overcast, light, rain, temperature 17, dew point 16, altimeter 2984, advise on initial contact, you have information, Sierra.
Okay, so we got the Sierra weather update, all of our wind information, our ceiling, everything is the same. However, there's now light rain falling at Chicago, so we'll be landing in the rain, which I believe we took off in the rain, come to think of it. So we've just gone down through 18,000, and we need to change our altimeter back to 2984, which is what we just got from the weather report. Do a heading course adjustment. Adjustment. Looks like we've got some weather out there. I do have the weather turned on. I'm not seeing anything at the moment on the weather radar. We are looking downwards as we descend. Looked like that was a flash of lightning that we just saw. Getting ready to hit Mince. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and I want to make sure that my MCP is set to continue its descent beyond Mince. Our intercept altitude for the glide slope is 2,500. We only have one other constraint before that, so I'm going to go ahead and change the the MCP to 2500. That will allow us to continue descending beyond the Minsk waypoint. We're still a little ways out, at 14 nautical miles before we hit Minsk. Crossing through almost 12,500 feet. Adjustment. 113 nautical miles from the airport. If you look over here at the right CDU, 112. Fuel all looking good. Now it's saying it wants some drag. So we'll go ahead and put the air brake on. See over here that our speed was getting above our speed bug a little bit. Keep an eye on that as we descend. We are slowing down because we're approaching the 10,000 foot speed restriction of 250 knots. So the speed bug's already dropped to 240 and the plane is attempting to slow down. Looks like we're easily going to be at 10,000 feet by Minsk, 2.5 nautical miles away. Still slowing down a little bit here. I'm going to add a little more drag. Looks good. Arnie is about 22 nautical miles away. We're still a little bit 99 nautical miles away from the airport. I think we're in good shape. Another heading to course adjustment. We are below 10,000 feet, so we can go ahead and get our airport information. We just picked up the ATIS traffic from Chicago.
Kilo Oscar Romeo Delta Airport.
We picked up somebody's. Actually, that was Merriman Airport information. So we just picked up ATIS for another airport. We just put on our landing lights up top here. Everything else is good. We are descending, cabin pressure looking fine, no other warnings. So we've got Ernie coming up. We still don't have a signal from the airport, which is expected. We're still a little ways out. So where are we in relationship to the airport? So we'll look at the NavGraph map here. We flew from Stash. We're up over the water. We just left the Mince waypoint, heading towards Ernie right now. Landing 22 left. We're going to come to the left, and then we're going to get lined up with the runway. Go back to my runway overlay, have it ready and in position. 7 nautical miles from the airport, 9 nautical miles away from the next waypoint. Ah, and here comes the rain. Wow. The rain is high up. So you can see that the ILS always picks up other ILS signals at times, depending on what airports are around you. IFJU would not be our signal. We were looking for ILQQ. That should update here momentarily. Oh, and I see one issue in our flight plan potentially. Let me get down here kind of quick and take a look at that. So, Pappy 2 result, Perp. We actually want to go from Ernie to our, I see why this is all off now. I need to fix this kind of quick. We need to go to Kennel, put that down here, go back up. Currently, we want to go to Kennel now. So Kennel, execute. So we're moving to Kennel now. That puts us 25 nautical miles out, and we need to go to lap 1 right away. Start slowing the aircraft down, get our speed down. So the aircraft is slowing down. I'm going to go ahead and put on the air brake, the speed brake, I should say, because we're not going to make it. We need to be descending. Descend. 10 nautical miles out. I don't think we're going to make that. Increase our descent rate here a little bit. We're going to go to flaps 2. Strong. We just need to hit 20, 30, 2500 by the lake. I'm looking at the green bar here in the navigation display to control my rate of descent so that I can achieve 2500 by the lake. I go to flaps 5. Watching my speed. Flaps 10. Not much to see outside but rain and clouds. Probably overly concentrating on my descent since we had a little mix up there in our flight plan. We need to be at 2500 to intercept the glide scope. I'm going to go ahead and engage the localizer. So the localizer is already engaged and locked. We need to continue to press down here some. Speed's a little fast. I think we're going to be okay. We're at flaps 10 right now. Shape, starting to come up on lake. Back off my descent rate here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and gauge our approach. Glide slope is engaged. We'll watch our speed here. We're going to go to put our landing gear down. Go to flaps 15. Definitely got to get our speed down. Awfully fast. Get our speed down. Picking up entirely too much speed.
Too fast. Too fast.
No kidding.
Approaching. 2 left. Too fast. Too fast. Too
No
fast.
kidding.
Too fast. Too fast. Too fast.
30, 20, 10.
Long landing. Long landing. 4,000 feet remaining. 3,000 feet remaining.
Wow, well that was a bit fast coming in there. Way fast coming into the runway. But you know what? We were able to salvage that. Not pretty at all. Barely had visibility there on the runway at the final part of the approach. Couldn't get my speed down because I wasn't set up correctly. I couldn't figure out why my distance from the airport was so far. And when it finally dawned on me after we had turned from the Ernie waypoint, I'm like, wait a minute, something's not right here because the airport shouldn't be that far away. And I was actually looking at the Navigraph map going, why am I off? And then I realized I had one too many additional waypoints programmed in there, and I had to go and fix that kind of quickly. Pretty impressive that we actually pulled off that landing. You know, it wasn't perfect, and I gotta tell you, I've performed this landing numerous times on virtually every runway at this airport, and it's always been one thing or another that's been very challenging. All right, well, we had a successful landing on the runway. It got a little squirrely there in the end, to be quite honest, and it's so interesting to watch the landing back and see where I made my mistakes. I'm so focused on the details that I think are important for the landing that when something occurs and all of a sudden you have to take an action that you weren't planning on taking, that completely derails all the other things that I probably should have been looking at. So after flying this approach that one time that you just watched and flying it again after that, I made the same mistake, the same exact mistake twice, where I engaged the vertical speed in the aircraft, and as soon as I manipulated that vertical speed and I activated it, my auto thrust got locked at whatever speed the plane was flying at that point, and it kept my speed up rather than having the speed drop down with the flaps. As I increased the angle of the flaps, my speed bug should have continued to have gone down, and it wasn't. So each time I was coming in fairly fast. Now there was plenty of time, well, there probably would have been some time to slow down had I recognized it and prevented that from happening. But I didn't do that, and I was a little bit oblivious to it, and I'm increasing the flaps, yet I'm maintaining a higher speed. Alright, so now we know what we need to pay attention to. I'm going to try and stay focused on that. We're going to run this approach one more time. I'm going to speed us along to the initial approach fix, and then we'll continue our descent down to the runway, and hopefully not run into the same problems we've run into before. So let's watch this and see how this turns out. Hey, welcome back to Aircraft Adventures. I'm Liam Locke, and we are trying again part 2 of our flight from Ronald Reagan National Airport to Chicago O'Hare International Airport, because that last approach didn't go quite as planned. A little bit fast on the landing there, so we're trying it again because we had that one mix-up in the flight plan when we changed to runway 22 left. Well, I fixed that issue. I've got the plane set up for landing again. We're just about to hit our top of descent, and we're going to walk through this procedure one more time and see if we can't improve upon that last landing. One thing also you may notice this go around is I'm always looking to improve the FSX flight simulator to add to the realism, and I stumbled upon some different sounds for specifically this 737 aircraft, so both externally and internally interacting with the buttons and the controls, as well as what you hear outside the aircraft, a whole different sound library for this plane. and it sounds great. I mean, take a listen. Right, you get that rumble of the jet engines behind the plane, but as we scan around it, that cone of sound, right? They're a little louder, a little harsher sounding from the front. That's cool. Such a great touch. Looking good. Coming around, I see that we do have the ILS identifier, ILQQ up. So I'm going to go ahead and engage localizer. So as we come across the localizer, we'll connect up and get lined up with the runway. .3 nautical miles from the runway. Looking over here at the right CDU. Getting ready to pass the decel point. So there goes our decel. We're going to go to flaps 5. Introduce drag. The MCP is calling, the CDU is calling for drag. So we put the speed brake out. Below 210, going to go to flaps 10. the speed brake back in. Now this descent down to the runway, I picked up a lot of speed last time. Partly that was my fault, but I want to create some additional drag once I go to the higher flap settings. So I'm going to put the gear out in advance as we cross the Canil waypoint. That should be in the neighborhood of, what, 12 nautical miles from the runway. Should, once we reach the Canil waypoint, also we should pick up the localizer signal. We've got some arcs set up from the airport, so we've got a 4-mile arc and a 10-mile arc. And looks like the glide slope signal is alive. So we're going to go to, not quite yet, I'm going to wait a second here. We're at flaps 10, yes. Alright, we just engaged the localizer. I'm going to arm approach, go to flaps 15 and put the gear down. Also need to put the second autopilot engaged, so command B is set up. Now we're waiting to catch the glide slope. Closing in on our glide slope intercept altitude of 2,500 feet. Glide slope is engaged. We go flaps 25. Seven nautical miles from touchdown. And we're going to go flaps 30. Here's where we start to pick up speed. A little bit of chop out there. We do have a little bit of a crosswind, 18 knots. And it's raining. Super cloudy out there. 1,400 feet above the ground.
Too fast. Too fast.
This is the same warning we got last time, but we're in a better situation. Our speed is a little fast. We definitely want to slow down now.
Too fast.
To
Too fast.
156.
Too fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast.
We should
Too
level
fast.
off as we
Too
get down
fast.
here a little
Too
bit more.
fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast.
I
Too
heard you. My
fast.
gosh.
Too fast.
Stop
Too
already.
fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast.
Oh, we're
Too
slowing down.
fast.
We're slowing
Too
down.
fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast. Too fast.
There we go. Brass can calm down.
Approaching. 2 left.
We're not in bad shape. Aircraft is slowing down. I still don't have visibility on the runway. And we start to break out of the fog here.
500.
Looking pretty good. Look like we're lined up. We got flare mode is engaged, ready to fire. Alignment looks good.
Minimums.
Now we're going to continue.
100. 50. 40. 30.
A little bit of flare.
20, 10.
Looks good.
Feet remaining.
Got the reversers engaged.
3,000 feet remaining.
60 knots. Disengage the reversers. Continue our braking here. Beautiful. And that is how it is done in my book. That is a successful landing. RAS definitely doesn't like how fast we're coming in there, that last little descent down to the runway. But I think that was okay, other than her annoying us constantly with the too fast warning. We're going to go ahead and stop here on the runway and get a couple things set up in aircraft. Get that off the screen. Get our APU started up. Get our taxi lights turned on, our landing lights turned off. Go ahead and turn off our strobe. Anti-collision, everything is good there. Looks fine. We'll go down here and turn off our transponder, set it to expander only. And once again, as I promised, that landing, there's a lot going on coming in for our landing that I don't even think about bringing up the heads-up display, and I really need to work on that. So now we're waiting on the follow me car from GSX, and we'll see if he drives across the grass again this time. While we're waiting on him, just spot check our instruments. Lights are set, everything's off. The APU is up. We won't switch to that quite yet. Passenger seatbelts are still on. Looks good. We can look outside the aircraft and see that our spoilers and our flaps are still down. So we can go ahead and retract those. The spoilers down. Bring the flaps in. Follow me vehicle is on the way, according to GSX. Ah, here it comes. All right, fingers crossed that he stays on the taxiways and waits for us. Oh, and it's not looking promising. This is a huge airport. Navigating to our gate. Try and keep my speed somewhere between 20 and 25 knots. I believe we are over there. Cut in right here. We should have a marshaller over there to the right. Oh, yeah, I think I see him. Where's going to be a turnoff here? I don't see the turnoff. Oh my god, this is pretty hairy. Alright, welcome to Chicago O'Hare. That was a fun taxi to the gate, in the rain no less. We just got the engine cutoff sign from the marshaller. Make sure I got my APU powered up here and switch power over to it. So APU is online. We'll go ahead and kick power over to the APU. Looks good. Go down and we're gonna kill the engines. That's good. Turn off the flight directors. Wait for the engines to spool down here. Thank you, Marshall. Appreciate it. We have a caution for overhead. Go ahead and turn off our taxi lights. We'll turn off our anti-collision light. The engines are off. Oh, we'll leave those on for right now. The logo and the wing lights. Turn off our probes. We need to put our Apu Bleed on. Go ahead and open this up. Turn our fuel pumps off. Talk to grounds crew and get the wheel chocks put in place. Before we do that though, we need to go down to the CDU. Get our wheel chocks set. And we'll ask for ground power. Let's get the jetway connected to the aircraft. We'll get the ground crew moving as well and get the doors open. Something we should have done even sooner is free the passengers from their seat. Looks good. We do have ground power available to us now. It's good. We're going to switch over to ground power. And leave the APU run for just a few minutes longer. Doors are open, forward and forward cargo, aft cargo. We need to go down and make sure we turn our transponder off. Go to standby. And with them connected, we'll go ahead and call for deboarding. And well, that's basically it. We had to fly that landing a number of times into Chicago O'Hare. It wasn't bad. Learned a little bit in the process. Got to experience I think it was five different runways coming into Chicago O'Hare. Welcome to Chicago. I really appreciate you watching this flight. If you learned anything from it, by all means, click the thumbs up button and let me know that you liked it. And if you want to see more of these videos, I hope you click the subscribe button and come back for more. I've got plenty more flights lined up. Flight going to San Antonio. We're going to go back to the islands and do some landings out there. And then I think it's time to go overseas. There's a bunch of interesting airports in Europe I'd like to try to fly into. And those are on our agenda as well. Anyway, I'm Liam Locke. This is Aircraft Adventures. And I do appreciate you checking it out. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.